Welcome back, everybody, to the My First Rodeo podcast, the show that asks really cool and interesting people about the first time they did the things that put them on paths to success. Today is no exception. We have the very funny Billy O'Connor. He's not just funny, he's had an incredible life story. I look forward to introducing you to him. But first, I'm really excited to introduce to you my guest host today, Chaz Miranda. Say hello, Chaz.
Hello.
Chaz is amazing in her own right. I guess I should address the what is it, the 800-pound gorilla in the room, not you, but the absence of Liv. Liv hasn't been here for a little while. For those who have been listening since the beginning, you will remember Liv as a very funny, a very cool, very smart co-host. She helped launch this podcast with me, and then she took a job that takes her to New York, which is really cool for her. So hopefully we'll get her back one day, but for now, it's me and guest hosts, and who knows, maybe we'll have a permanent host at some point, or you'll be stuck with me, but we will make it cool and we will make it fun, and I don't know any more cool and fun people than Chaz.
Well, thank you for that.
She is. Chaz is a social media influencer. She is a model. She's just a cool person. We vibed from the very beginning when we met at a social function, and I was doing comedy in a room that was not ready to have comedy. It was a big whatever room, and for reasons that escape me, you stood there and listened as I did this hostage situation of a comedy show. And yeah, we've been fast friends ever since, right?
Yes, I was ready for it. So I was excited we got to chat afterwards.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We chatted. I remember the first question I asked you. You remember the first question I asked you?
I do not.
You don't? Well, I mean, we were at a social sort of networking type event. And so I think I asked a question, something like, what do you do? And I bet you know what your answer was, because I'm sure it was not the first time you gave that answer.
It was probably something along the lines of like, I float around town and I have a good time and I have fun and I meet all the people.
Yeah, that was about it. There was something about gardening, I will say.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I like to garden and I don't like to wear clothes when I do it. So
yeah, that struck me as a different type of answer than one generally gets at a Chamber of Commerce type event. But I think it's a great answer. And you and I talked about it because, I'm sure, if it's true, it's true, but also it's not your typical answer. And I think that usually in this culture, we ask people, what do you do? And they say, I'm a lawyer, a doctor, an Indian chief, whatever. But that's such a small part of what you do or what one does. And you define it differently, don't you?
Right. Yeah. I don't define myself by what I do to make money. So there's so much more of me, and it's definitely more defining of who I am than what I clock in for weekly.
How did you get that way? That's a cool thing. Chaz is younger than me, which isn't saying a lot because I'm reasonably old. But to have that level of self-awareness and maturity and, I don't know, just coolness as a younger person, how'd you get that way?
I think I've always been kind of free-spirited. I'd like to call myself like a butterfly and just float around and do my own thing.
Don't they die really quickly, though?
Well, okay, let's not think of that aspect of it. But just being fun and happy, I see how that helps other people, how it makes them feel. And I just want to create more of that. So, yeah.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. So I've been following some of your modeling and type stuff on Instagram. Where do you tend to do those shoots, and how did they come about?
So around Jacksonville. I'm born and raised in Jacksonville. I absolutely love this city. So anything that I can do to promote Jacksonville, to help anyone in the city kind of get their events or any happenings that they have off the ground, I'll absolutely do that. So a lot of the modeling that I did and do just started with photographers who were new to, taking photos, and they just wanted someone to work with. And me being all over the place, I'm like, well, let's go discover some new spots in Jacksonville and take pictures. I'm excited.
And they're not your usual photos of, whatever, a person standing in front of a wall. They're very experiential.
Right. Yeah. I have a yoga practice. I love to do yoga. So I'm kind of flexible and I can get into these fun types of poses, and you'll see me upside down and leaning backwards over things, and or out in nature. Oh my goodness, I love to be outside. I love to take photos outside. So just kind of finding these small little pockets in Jacksonville that people wouldn't know about and bringing some awareness to it.
That's very cool. What a great approach. Well, are you excited to meet Billy?
Oh, I'm so excited.
Billy is cool. And, we're going to have comedians. We haven't had comedians on this show yet, which is kind of funny since I'm a comedian. But I wanted to pick and choose who we had and get the ones I wanted when they were available. And so we're going to have two back-to-back, one dropping shortly with Billy O'Connor. And then in another couple weeks, we'll have another comedian who's very different from Billy. I'll leave it at that for now. But what I'll say about Billy before we bring him on is he is hasn't been a comedian his whole life. He was a lot of things, including, and I don't think I'm outing him when I say this, an absolute drunk and a struggling human being, which is not bad fodder for being a comedian. But he was a fireman. He was and is a September 11th first responder. He did some work in somewhat illicit activities, including being a bookie. Do you even know what a bookie is?
I have no idea. I was hoping you were going to elaborate on that.
Well, it will be elaborated on. A bartender. Now he's an author. He's written some screenplays. So he's a really cool guy, and just has a great voice, both literally and just the people for whom he speaks. So let's get Billy in here, okay? Billy.
All right, brother, I come in finally.
All right.
Man, they kept telling me I had the wrong user ID. I said, man, how many names can I use? I take out the apostrophe. I tried everything. Here you go. Hi, Michael. How are you, my brother?
Hey, man, I thought you weren't using anymore. You need a user ID?
Well, you know what I'm going to do? A user ID, yeah. What I've got to do is I got to start breaking the meds in half. You know what I mean? I'm using them too tough with them. You know, I got to break them in half.
I feel you. Can you see us, or can you only hear us? Are you able to see us, Billy?
Yes, I can see. Can you see me?
I see the words Billy O'Connor, but...
okay, hang on. Let's see. Hang on.
All right. This is what happens when you deal with the geriatric community.
Wait, start video. Hang on a second. Wait a minute.
Yeah, you've never... This is thing... Oh, there he is. Handsome.
Wait a minute. Here I am.
All right. And this person with me is Chaz Miranda. Say hello to Chaz.
Chaz?
Chaz.
I like it.
It's a cool name. Where are you? You look like...
Is this big enough for you? Can you see me okay? It's big enough? I don't got to fool with the screen?
Yeah, bigger would scare us. You look like you're in the Unabomber's cabin. Where are you?
You're exactly right, man. I'm putting it together now.
All right.
They'll pay. They'll pay for what they did to me. They'll pay.
Which day are you talking about?
I have all of them. I'm getting them all.
All the different days.
Indiscriminate. I'm going to take revenge indiscriminately.
Well, how
you doing, pal?
Doing well. I was out in your neck of the woods a few weeks ago. Sorry I didn't get to see you, but how are things on the West Coast?
Hot. Hot, but we spend a lot of time down at the sailboat. My wife had neurological issues. I live at 6,400 feet.
Yeah, and
I'm all the way up in the mountains.
And in fairness, someone would only marry you if they had neurological issues, right?
Without a doubt. In fairness, she only married because she had extreme neurological problems. Exactly. But you know what it is when she comes up here, the pressure plays havoc with her. But so she had to be at sea level. Obviously, I can't afford a house on the water. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a poor retired firefighter. So I bought a 30-foot sailboat down at the water. We stay on the boat when we go down there. And she's like a 20-year-old kid down there.
That is so cool.
Putting up sails. Yeah, man. Wake up in the morning, you're looking at the marina.
That is perfect.
I think it was $15,000 for the boat and then $300 a month.
That's amazing.
Water.
That sounds terrific. I like that.
We take it out all the time. I love the sail.
Oh, that's outstanding. Yeah, you get some wins. I was struck by the fact when I was in California, I don't know if you saw this when you were out there most recently, Chaz, but everybody's on strike, not just the writers and the actors, but the hotel workers and these people and that people. It's just like a part-time job to be on strike out there, it seems.
Well, I don't know as much, obviously, about the writer's strike and the actor's strike as Frank.
Sure.
But I'm a union guy from way back. I mean, look, I'm a firefighter from New York, 9/11, the whole deal. Everything I have, I owe because of unions. You know, I mean, my unions. Yeah. And the only thing is, these guys, I don't know where they're getting their prep from, but I mean, there's no reason to go out on strike during the summer if you're a writer, or you want to go out when it's going to hurt. Yeah. I remember years ago when Lindsay was mayor in New York, and the head of the sanitation union was a guy named Michael Delury. And Delury was from Ireland. He had a real thick Irish brogue. The New York Transit Authority is going out on strike. And what he did was he took them out on strike. the sanitation department. So no garbage being picked up in New York.
Oof.
In the middle of August during a heat wave.
Good call.
It was like 110 degrees.
Right.
And all this garbage was piled up in front of these fancy restaurants in Manhattan. Rats running all over the place, you know. Man, they settled that strike fast. In 2 weeks, they settled it.
Yeah,
and
timing is it.
On the mayor.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, they're not usually doing much in Hollywood, although I brought my daughter out there, and there's literally nothing going on. Is she in the business? Is she in the entertainment business? Oh, goodness. So she's just a fangirl. So 14 years old. And you mentioned Frank earlier. We're talking about Frank Pace, our mutual friend, who is a very prominent producer with Paramount out there. And he was kind to give us some backstage tours. And for listeners, they'll remember him from one of our earlier episodes. But what I didn't mention in Billy's introduction earlier, Chaz, is that he and Frank Pace have their own podcast that's very successful, very interesting, called A Mick, a Mook, and a Mike. And you are one of those three. Is that right?
I would be the Mick.
You would be the Mick. And the Mook would be Frank. Guy
smile, and they used to call us Mick. So I'm the Mick. And Mook is an Italian slur for idiot. So Frank kindly was hardly any idiot, but he kindly took up the mantle of Mook. A Mick, a Mook, and a Mike.
That's all right.
And we've had, because of Frank's connections, we've had amazing guests. You know, I mean, David Scott comes immediately to mind.
Yeah.
You know,
first guy to drive on the moon.
Astronauts.
Yeah, and first guy to drive on the moon.
Yeah, I mean, talking to a guy, the first guy to drive on the moon was pretty remarkable. And Rod Carew, Artis Gilmore, on, Stephen Lang. You know, we've had some great guests. So it gives me a chance to meet some really fascinating people.
Yeah.
Of course, you know there's no money in a podcast, right, Chaz? You know that, right?
I'm learning.
He didn't write your check, did he?
Show him what your pay is today. We got a bag of dill pickle potato chips.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And actually,
coconut water.
And she bought.
And I bought it myself.
She did buy them herself. Yeah. I'll reimburse you.
You had to buy it yourself. Well,
barely a cost.
Yeah, man. So, gosh, I don't even know. You know, we talk about firsts, and there's so many different facets of your life. But let's start with one of the more titillating ones. I mentioned the word bookie to Chaz, and you know what? She doesn't know what one is.
No
so
idea.
You get to start, and a lot of our listeners may not be familiar with that term. You were one of those, were you not?
I was a bookie. A bookie is a guy who takes illegal sports bets.
Illegal is what he said. Not illegal, illegal.
Illegal. Yeah. Now they advertise it on television because, again, once corporations get involved, everything seems okay. It's like pot. Sure. You know, they used to send guys to jail for pot. Now the corporations are selling it. No problem. As long as they're getting their cut, everybody's fine. Same thing with bookmaking. People gamble on football, and baseball, and basketball. And I was an illegal bookie. The reason I became a bookie is because I was a compulsive gambler. And as a compulsive gambler, I mean, it's like any other compulsion. It's like drugs. It's like alcohol. It becomes all consuming. So I was losing so much money gambling. I talked to my partner, a buddy of mine, who was on a fire department with me, incidentally enough. I said, look, man, we're gambling anyway. Why don't we take the action? We know enough guys that bet. So we started taking action, and we started making a lot of money. But of course, being the personality I had of compulsion, I took the money and I did what most people would do with it. That was making easy money. I put it up my nose and, drank it and partied my way out, and then I blew the rest, actually.
Oh, that was the good investment?
that was the good investment. But so, yeah, I was a bookie for a while. Then I ended up, I was on a fire department for 20 years, New York City Fire Department. And I was first responder at 9/11. So, and then I was a Vietnam vet. I've had a pretty wild run, but what I did was when I got out of the fire department after 9/11, I retired and I went down I told my girlfriend at the time, I said, listen, I want to get as far away from New York as possible. Because I'll tell you something, 9/11 was horrific. I mean, working down there at that dig, it made Vietnam look like a day at the beach. I mean, it was a disaster, horrible. So, yeah, I said to my girlfriend, I said, I want to get away from New York as far as possible. We moved down to Key West.
It's about as far as you could go, at least in the East Coast.
About as far as I could get without going to Cuba. Exactly right. 90 miles from Cuba. So I went down there and banged around for about a year. She was teaching English. And then she was an academic. So she got a scholarship to go to the University of Florida to get a doctorate. They wanted to get a doctorate. And they said, we'll pay for everything. So I was going up to Gainesville. I said, you know what, man? I kind of always wanted to go to college. I'm 62 years old. I was jogging past the university. I said, but Vietnam got in the way, life got in the way. I'm going to enroll in college. So I did. And I graduated at 66 with a degree in journalism. And then I started writing. And my first book, they say, write what you know. So my first book was Confessions of a Bronx Bookie, which showed, what life of gambling and dissipation can do. And it was about Vietnam. It was about various plots around the country. And it got great reviews. For a guy who self-published it, I sold maybe 7,000, 8,000 books, which is a lot when you're not famous.
Yeah.
You run out of friends at about 100. And I sold about 7,000 or 8,000 books. The reviews were great. So then I wrote another book about 9/11. If you write what you know, and I wrote about a fireman, who's lost his way and finds an epiphany at 9/11. We called that the Mick. And then I rewrote. Me and Frank worked on his biography, If These Lips Could Talk.
Yeah, that's a great one.
And then we worked on revising. Well, then we wrote Lamar's Gamble, which is about corruption in the NFL. Again, something I knew about because as a bookie, I could see that everything wasn't quite on the level. Anybody who thinks you got billion dollars in the industry and that nobody can get to anybody is living in an imaginary world. I mean, this is America. Nothing's on the level.
And am I right that was a screenplay that you had come up with even before you met Frank?
Yes, way back when I was writing when I was in college. I was writing a column for the Independent Florida Alligator, which went out to about 12,000 people. And so I was writing a column weekly. It was called Lost to the Source. It was just obviously about LSD, opium, and all the stuff I got wrapped up in when I was a kid. And then I wrote this column about the 1969 Super Bowl being fixed, the Jets and the Colts, the Joe Namath I Guarantee It game. I don't know, Chaz, if you're familiar with football, but Namath guaranteed a win in the Super Bowl. And I knew a guy who played the game. He went to the same high school as me and the same lived in the neighborhood. And he swore to God, his name was Fatso Donovan, Art Donovan. He used to do all the talk shows. You might have seen him, Mike, on Johnny Carson and everything. He was a real funny guy from the Bronx. He did all the talk shows. He told me, I'm telling you, that game was fixed. He said, no way that Jets could have beat us that day. And I started doing some research. So I wrote this column anyway in the paper. And I took it to my mentor, who was the professor at the school. And he was always watching out for me. And I said, hey, I was the same age as he was, actually. His name was Mike, too. And I say, Mike, what do you think about this column? He says, Billy, that's your yellow brick road. He goes, I wouldn't print that column. He says, you see it as a short story? You see it as a book? He says, you know what? I see it as a screenplay. I said, so do I. I never wrote a screenplay. He goes, well, Diablo Cody, I interviewed her last month and she wrote Juno and she never wrote a screenplay. Huh. She was in a Starbucks, Diablo Cody, and she overheard this 15-year-old kid talking to his daughter, to his girlfriend about her being pregnant.
Right.
And
remember
Diablo
the movie Juno?
Cody wrote Juno. She wrote Juno. Mm-hmm. So he said, you can do it, Billy. You're a writer. You can write anything. Just put your mind to it. So I wrote the screenplay. And of course, this is how I met Frank. I was coming out with the screenplay, and a friend of mine knew Frank. I said, this is my ticket, man. Frank's going to look at this, make the movie, and I'm going to be rich. This is it.
Yeah. How'd that work out?
Huh?
How did that
work out like
that? Always better
in theory. Another real good friend of in my queue anyway, which never hurts.
He's a great
friend. And he's
been
nothing. Frank's a sweetheart. He's like, I know we must have interviewed in the last 3 years 200 people.
Yeah.
I never heard a bad word said about him, including yourself.
No, he's amazing. And so much energy when you talk about him since he's got his own episode. But it's amazing at his age how impactful he still is in Hollywood and just how much energy he has for you. You would think one would grow tired of it at some point.
Constantly working. And most guys his age are dead.
Well, there's that too. That's why they work less, I guess. So I want to come back to the bookie stuff.
Comedy, don't you?
Comedy?
Yes, cool. Back to the bookie. So when you're a bookmaker, I'm sorry, did I interrupt? I'm sorry.
I think we're going to interrupt each other a lot, so just keep on going, man.
All right, brother. Well, the way it works, Chaz, is this. So suppose the Dallas is playing the Giants, and you want to bet $100 on Dallas or $1,000 or $10,000 on Dallas. Well, you'll call me up and say, I want to bet Dallas. You'll say, what's the line? I'll say, Dallas is 3. over the Giants, that means they have to win by 3 points. If you take the Giants, you're getting 3 points. Now, the catch is here, the way bookmakers make their money is they charge vigorish. And the vigorish is the vig. In other words, if you bet $110, if you bet $100, if you lose, you have to pay 10%. So you have to bet 110 to win 100. If you win, there's no juice, no vigorish. But figure that 10%, how bad can it be? 10% is 10%. Math is a pure science. Over the course of a year, you're going to get murdered because you can't beat a 10% edge. It's crazy. So everybody loses. Everybody who bets sports loses. I don't care who you are, with the possible exception of a guy named Billy Walters, who's legendary in the bookmaking business. But anyway, he's been indicted 3 or 4 times, so does have his drawbacks. But anyway, I take $100 from you, I lay it against him, and I make $10 no matter what.
That was going to be my question. So you're not playing with house money. You are playing with 2 people who want to bet against each other, basically, and you're taking a spread.
Exactly.
I got you.
You make money either way?
They make money. They make the big either way.
Yes,
somebody's winning.
The loser has to pay juice. Yeah. Now, most people think 99% of the general public thinks that's how bookmaking works. Chaz wants to bet $100 on Dallas. Mike likes the Giants. I take your $100, I lay it against him, and I take $10 for my fee. That's not really how it works. Okay. Here's how it really works. Mm-hmm. On any given Sunday, you might have 16 games in the NFL. Mm-hmm. 11 of those games won't mean much to a bookmaker. It'll be $10,000 here, $10,000 here. It won't be big. There'll be 4 or 5 games that are huge. And that'll be like, if you're in New York, the Giants are playing Dallas, that's a big game. Okay. Sunday night games are always big, of course. 4 o'clock game if it's a rivalry. So there'll be like 4 or 5 games that a lot of money will come in, maybe $80,000 on those games, or the other games are like $10,000. So those are the games where you're going to win or lose. Now, if you got 5 games that you have a lot of money on, if you're a bookmaker, all you got to do, because of the juice, is win 2 out of those 5 games, and you break even. Okay. I'm talking in generalities here, but 2 out of 5, you break even, because if they win 3 games, even the 2 games they lose, they're going to have to pay so much juice that you're almost relatively break even. If you win 3 out of 5, the bookmaker wins 3 out of 5, you're going to win money, a lot of money. If you win 4 out of 5, you crush the player. Right. So it's very unusual. The only way you could ever get hurt is if you only win 1 out of 5. So
the bookmaker's in the action.
20% shot.
The bookmaker's in the action.
It's the action.
Can I just say this is so far from these fantasies and ideas of him being a librarian that I had in my mind.
That's what she thought a bookmaker was.
Well, books.
Oh, bookmaker was a librarian? Yeah. I'd like to tell my bookmaker that the dog ate my homework a couple of times to tell me, aren't you just a librarian? I ain't paying you.
That's funny.
Then they send you the guys. They send you the guys with the broken noses and the bad ears to say, I think it's a good time to pay. Okay.
It's funny. Oh, go ahead, Mike. I was going to say, you reminded me of your librarian question. I was going to diverge here that I brought my daughter when she was very little to my alma mater, and we were sitting at this table at an event, and my daughter was with me, and the woman who had been the librarian at my university, Jacksonville University, when I was there many years ago, 25 years ago, was sitting at the table with us. And I said, Sammy, to my daughter, I said, this woman was the librarian when I was in college. And my daughter goes to the librarian lady, she goes, did you used to read to my daddy? Because that's what librarians do at elementary school.
We have these ideas we create in our mind. So
indeed.
I'm learning as I go.
So is the mob, so to speak, I know that term's thrown around, is that necessarily involved in bookmaking? Were you stepping on toes? Were you part of their toes? How did that work?
Well, that's another thing. The first thing you do when you start taking action, if you're small, nobody's going to bother you. But of course, you're going to grow. When you start growing, then the wise guys come around. They want to know, what are you doing? Who do you think you're doing? This is my territory, that kind of bullshit. But unfortunately, growing up in the Bronx, I knew a couple of guys that were like, everybody whose name ends in a vowel in New York, they tell you, hey, you know who my uncle is? You know who my uncle is? Yeah, I know who your uncle is. Your mother's brother. Now shut up and get the hell out of my sight. I don't care who your uncle is. But some guys are legit, and I knew a couple of guys that were really legit. They were, a matter of fact, one guy, this guy Joe Denti. He was the boss of bosses on Arthur Avenue, which is an Italian enclave in the Bronx. It's like Little Italy, but not on Mott Street in the Bronx. And it's this guy was the boss of bosses there. So all the bookmakers had to kick back to him, this guy Joe Denti. And I'll tell you a funny story. I used to meet him, one of his runners. You know, he wasn't going to meet me. He was a big boss. But he sent one of his runners to meet me every week, and I'd pay the runner or collect whatever. Usually I was paying. And this guy's name was Vinny, and I'd meet Vinny, and I'd pay Vinny every week. And he was a good friend of mine, Vinny. And he's the guy who got me waived so I could take action. I didn't have to deal with the wise guys because Vinny was connected. So anyway, one week I go, and Vinny ain't there. I'm meeting this guy, Joe Fish, and I'm paying Joe Fish's money.
Right.
And Joe Fish later on becomes Joe Pesci, the movie star.
Oh, of course. Yeah, Pesci means fish.
Yeah. He was a runner for the bookmaker, Joe Pesci, you know. So
that's too funny.
I got to be half-ass friends with Joe. You know, I used to meet him every now and then and pay him money or whatever. But he was a runner for this guy, Joe Denti. Now, I'll tell you how he got discovered. It's an interesting story. What's the language situation here? Am I on the Colin rule?
No, you be you. Speak however you
First
like
Amendment. You're
yes,
okay
sir.
with it. Okay.
Yes,
because the story, it's Joe Pesci talking, so the story's going to get a little...
Yeah.
Because Joe Pesci's Joe Pesci. That's the way he talks.
Yeah,
you know?
I know you don't cuss yourself. You're going to blame Joe Pesci.
Oh, no. I got the Queen's English going all the way. Hear my accent.
I can tell.
And pardon my Montgomery, Alabama accent. I know it's very strong. You know?
I like it.
You can tell it's an Alabama accent. But
you're
so
definitely
anyway,
from down south.
Joe Pesci, Joe Fish, he used to, Joe Denti had this restaurant called Michael's. And he used to stroll around Michael's with a guitar and sing Italian songs. I don't know if you know, but Joe Pesci was hooked up pretty much with the Four Seasons in New Jersey. He did a lot with the Four Seasons. You know, it was his influence that helped them rise to fame. Anyway, he was a singer. He's a pretty decent singer, actually. He's not bad. And he'd roll around the Italian restaurant, you know, serving spaghetti. He'd sing Italian songs and serenade at the table and stuff. So one day he's sitting there, and he's eating his spaghetti before he's got to sing, and the phone rings. And he's sitting there with Joe Denti and my buddy Vinny, you know, and the phone rings, and the waiter says, "Hey, Joe, it's for you." Gets up, he answers the phone, he goes, "Hey, what? I'm going to do what?" He says, "How about this? How about up your mother's pook yak? How about that, you son of a bitch? If you ever come over here, I'll cut your balls off and stick it up your ass." And he slams the phone down. So now he sits down back in the booth and, you know, he's eating his spaghetti. And the phone rings again. And waiter says, "Hey, Joe, it's for you again." He goes, Wow, what's the matter with you? What are you, stupid? He goes, "What are you? I told you, call me back again, you son of a bitch. I'll cut your balls off." And he slams the phone down. So the guy says, "Hey, Joe, what's this all about, Joe?" He goes, "Some asshole." He goes, "I ain't got enough troubles trying to earn." He goes, "I'm trying to pick up a few bucks playing music. I can't even eat my dinner. This asshole calls me up and tells me he's Bobby De Niro and he wants to put me in a movie. It's just what I need. So you guys put him up to this. You guys break up my balls. Bobby De Niro wants to put me in a movie. What are you, out of your minds?" Blah, blah, blah. So about an hour later, lo and behold, Bobby De Niro walks into the restaurant. He goes, "Look, I don't know who you think I was, but I'm Bobby De Niro, and I'm really interested in casting you in a movie I'm making in the neighborhood on Arthur called Raging Bull."
Oh, wow.
And so now it's, "Hey, Bobby De Niro, sit down, mind you, have a good time, whatever." So Pesci reads the script, and they got a bit part for him because De Niro had seen him in a Danny Aiello movie about gangsters, and he had seen him in the background. There was something about him he wanted to put in the film. And he offered him the bit part, but he read the script and said, "Look, let me play your brother. I can play your brother." He said, "I'm telling you, I can play your brother." Well, that night in that restaurant, Denti wanted to show off. He had a big discotheque up in New Rochelle called Hoops, and 3 big bars, big discotheque. "You got to come see my other place, Bobby. Come up there." So he's sitting at the bar drinking scotch De Niro, and he sees a 17-year-old blonde girl dancing out on the stage, out on the dance floor. And he says, "Who is that girl?" He goes, "Her name is Kathleen Moriarty." He goes, "She looks just like Vicky, like Vicky Lamont." He goes, "Tell her I want to buy her a drink." And she comes over. She was 17 years old. That was a break. She became, she played Vicky Lamont in Raging Bull.
Wow.
So being in the right place at the right time and having that authenticity, that's a true story.
Wow. And of course, went on to do Goodfellas. De Niro's in that as well,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That
Casino, Goodfellas, my cousin Vinny.
Yeah, so you would say Pesci's really not playing anybody but himself, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what he was. He was a runner for a bookmaker, and that's exactly what he does. He plays himself.
Wow. Now, how did we were running through your accolades, and I want to dig into some of them more, but how did you not wind up with your connections through Frank and otherwise, and if I was casting certain people, you would be who I'd pull off the shelf. How do you not wind up being at least a character actor?
I guess I just came at it late, man, I came out here after college. I was 66, 67. So that was 8 years ago when I met Frank, and I had given him the screenplay about the 69 Super Bowl being fixed. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, look, Billy, it's an interesting story. He says, for your first effort, he goes, it's remarkable. He goes, it needs a lot of work, but what screenplay doesn't? He says, but who the hell's interested in the football game that was played in 1969? So I says, you don't think this is a good story? He says, nah, not really. I said, go fuck yourself. I said, this is a good story. He says, wait a minute. You just came into my office looking for a favor. Did you just tell me to go fuck myself?
Yes, I did.
I said, yeah, I guess I did. And he picks up the phone and he says, hey, come down here. I want you to meet this guy. He goes, I got this crazy fireman in my office. He's looking for a favor. And he comes in and tells me to go fuck myself. So this guy comes in. I swear to God, the guy was as big as a beer truck, And he comes in, hey. I said, I'm sitting there. I said, well, I blew this, man. Boy, I blow this. I'm sitting there. The guy walks in and says, are you the guy that told Frank to go fuck himself? I said, yeah, I guess I am. He goes, well, me and you will go get along great. He says. And then Frank took me to lunch, and we had lunch, and we became friends, and,
That's all right.
Yeah, that's how it happened. So, but he told me, look, Billy, take the screenplay. He says, everybody in Hollywood's got a screenplay. Everybody. No one's going to pay attention to your screenplay. Write a book. If the book sells and then they smell money, then you got a shot at the screen, which was good advice, because a lot of people make money how to write a screenplay, how to do this, the 3 ABCs of screenplays. It's great to write a screenplay. It's like having $50 million worth of heroin and bring it back from Vietnam. What are you going to do with it? Who are you going to sell it to? Now you got a screenplay. Who cares you got a screenplay? Mm-hmm. Who cares? Who's Billy O'Connor? Nobody gives a shit. Somebody will steal it maybe. Which is what they would do with the heroin, put a bullet in my ear, two behind my ear and take the heroin. But that's it. I mean, so told me to write the book, which I did. And then he co-wrote it with me. We wrote it together. And we got a bite from Mandalay Bay Industries, thinking about making it a movie. Because it's about corruption in the NFL. And but again, we got a Zoom call with them. We got a bite. Well, we'll see what happens. Knowing my luck, about a year after I'm dead, the thing will be made a movie. It'll be a home run.
It'll take off.
No, it's a great story.
Without a doubt.
I got to read a manuscript before it was published, and I've read it again. It was the same, but it would make a great movie. And it's not just about corruption; it's about the separateness of the American Football Conference and National Football League, and then the combination of the two ultimately, right?
Exactly. It's about the history of the NFL and how the NFL never could have happened. And the AFL could never have happened if it didn't happen in those particular years.
Yeah.
Because in the 60s, 64, 65, the amount of unrest in the streets between civil rights, the Vietnam War, and all the old school football fans, with the crew cuts and the tie and the collar. Because the Giants and all those teams had to have ties and collars, crew cuts. And now Namath comes along with long hair, fur coat. And all the young generation said, okay, the AFL, wide open, different rules, different, more passing. And people got excited about it. And it started making, and then, of course, ABC gave him a contract. And that's what solidified him. And plus, the guy who invented the league was the richest man. His father was the richest man on the planet at the time. Yeah. H.L. Hunt, the oil man.
Interesting. And I don't know how much you follow golf, but it just strikes me at this moment, the parallel between what's happened in professional golf over the past year, where that upstart league with lots of money, Saudi Arabian money, started. And sure enough, as I understand it anyway, I'm no expert on it, the PGA Tour and that Saudi Arabian league are now merging. So kind of a similar arc as the one you described.
And again, the key here is the do-re-mi, unlimited money. Yeah. You're not going to put a guy like that out of business. You're not going to put the Saudis out of business by waiting them out. You know what I mean? It ain't going to happen. Yeah. And it's the same thing with the NFL. For that matter, it's the same thing with everything. Money's money. The There was a guy, I don't know if you're familiar with, his name is Robert Moses. He was the head of all the bridges and the tunnels in New York. And the tolls.
There's a head of bridges and tunnels? There's a head. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, matter of fact, to go from one borough to another now, from Bronx to Queens, it costs you $12 to go from, you're not even leaving the city. It costs you $12 to cross the bridge and $12 back.
Yeah.
It's like $24 and you're still in the city. So
he didn't go
was
anywhere.
in charge of all the bridges. I'm sorry?
I said $24 not to go anywhere.
Exactly, not to go anywhere. And then you go to Jersey, across the Washington Bridge, it's $17 to cross the Washington Bridge. They don't charge you on the way back, so the way to beat the toll is to go out to Jersey and commit suicide. That's the first thing.
Just never come.
And a lot of people do. Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, so I mean, the guy who in charge of that was Robert Moses, and he had all the transit money. So all the mayors were scared shit. Even the governors were scared shit of Moses because nothing could get done in New York. They made quite a few movies about him, Robert Moses. So nothing can get done in New York unless the money came from Moses. Until Rockefeller became governor. Then Rockefeller told Moses, you're fired, you're out, forget it. Because Rockefeller had Rockefeller money. He wasn't that concerned about Moses. Mm-hmm. So that's, it's always about money. Everything's about it. As you well know, everything's about the cash.
Yeah. Follow the money for sure. One part of your life story that doesn't involve money per se, or maybe even at all, September 11th. If you don't mind, take us there. Where were you and what was that like?
Well, I had already retired about 4 months before 9/11. I had 20 years in, and I failed the captain's test. And it was the first test I ever failed in my life. And I had studied for 7-8 years for this captain's test. And they only come along every 5 years. And I misread one question that cost me 8 points. Anyway, make a long story short, I failed this test. And I said, you know what? I ain't waiting 5 years to become a captain and take another test. So I retired and I went down to Key West. And I was down in Key West on the fateful day. And of course, as soon as I saw it, I realized we were under attack. And a lot of my friends had their kids. There's a lot of nepotism involved in the fire department because a lot of kids see their father coming home smiling. They love their job. And they say, this is what I want to do. I want to be a fireman. I want to be like you, Pop. I want to get in the job. So a lot of my friends had their kids buried in that rubble. A lot of young kids were down there, young, on the job for a little bit. So I drove up there and worked on the dig for 3 days. I would have stayed longer. My mother had Alzheimer's. But anyway, I got there after both buildings were down.
Sure.
Wow.
And what stands out more in my mind than anything else, we have a euphemism. I worked in really busy companies in the South Bronx and Harlem where the action was. Back in the day when I first got on a job in the South Bronx, we were doing 18,000 runs a year. My company. Just my company, we were doing 18,000 runs a year. And a lot of them were workers. It's when the Bronx was burning. And so we have a euphemism for dead bodies. When we find a burnt dead body, we call it a roast. Because you don't want to connect a human being with the smell because once you smell the burnt body, it's really difficult to believe that man is the highest order of things.
Yeah.
It's the foulest smell. It stays in your nose for days and days and days. So down there, you didn't have that problem. There wasn't a lot of roasts. What we did have was bodies that were decaying under rubble in the hot sun. And it smelled like foul chicken. You know what I mean? Like we try and look for, remove a little bit of rubble, all of a sudden you go, oh, man. And then you knew you had a body there. We were finding fingers, arms, so everybody started putting Vicks Vapor Rub underneath their nose because it's such a strong smell, better than that than this. And it's just the overall smell. And then it was like from the explosion and the dust and the bones, you got to remember there's crushed bones, there's crushed glass, there's crushed building particles. All that stuff formed an umbrella over the whole site. So it was almost foggy down at the site.
Wow.
And guys were complaining, our shoes. We were going through like a pair of boots every 3 or 4 days because of the hot metal. If you stepped out, you burned your rubber. It was like a pile of heaping ash, And we just set up buckets. We were doing bucket brigades. sifting through all that garbage because we had 343 of our brothers run today. 343 firemen we lost that day. And by the way, since then, we've lost like almost 3,000 guys from various types of cancers. Who's got bone cancer, lung cancer, eye cancer. I never even heard of eye cancer. But all I get every day is pray for this guy, pray for that guy. I've had 2 melanomas myself, and I was only there 3 days. But the guys that were down there, we've lost 3,000 guys since, despite Christy Whitman saying that, it's safe, the air's safe, go down there and work. Don't let the terrorists win. But that was all bullshit.
As a result of being there, not just from,
asbestos and all the things that you talked about.
Bullshit, A lot of stuff in that air, man. It was terrible. But, 9/11 we lost more guys on 9/11, 343 guys that we've lost in the whole history of the department. And the house that I used to work in, 17 Truck in the South Bronx, it had a caricature of had misnomer as an unlucky house because we had lost 5 or 6 guys, over the course of the years, various accidents. Because it was a busy house. And when you're doing a lot of work, sometimes you're going to pay the ultimate price. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the job. But it was a great job. 20 years of my life, the proudest years of my life. I'll never forget it. Other than quit drinking, the proudest thing I've ever done was be on a fire department for 20 years. So outside of sobriety, which was the biggest thing I ever had to conquer was myself.
Yeah, and what brought you there? Other than good judgment, finally.
So you got to hit bottom, man. You got to hit bottom. That's the deal. It's funny. I went to a lot of AA meetings over the years, tried to quit a lot of times. And I was in an AA meeting one time, and a guy was telling a story, and he says, I was drinking with another guy, and we decided we were going to rob an appliance store. And he had a key to the warehouse. And it was like 4:00 in the morning. We went to the warehouse. He said, we took 2 washing machines, a refrigerator. We put it outside. Of course, we were both drunk. He said, then I realized the brains of the outfit, the guy who was planning the robbery, we were on bicycles. He said, so the getaway vehicle was a bicycle. And I says, okay, man. I said to the guy next to me, that's it. I'm out of here. I says, look, I might be a drunk. I might be a drugger. I might be a mess. There's no way I'm as bad as this guy. Right. And the guy next to me says, so you're leaving? I said, yeah. He says, you don't belong here. Says, no way. He says, so was your father a drunk? I said, yeah. Your brother a drunk? I said, yeah. Alcoholism run in your family? I said, it doesn't run in my family. It gallops. I said, yeah. But he goes, but you don't belong here. I said, no. He goes, I'll save you a seat. You'll be back. And he was right. You had to go further down the chain. Once you hit bottom, you realize, look, man, it's stop or die.
Right.
Yeah. And I've been sober now about 15 years. I still smoke a little Babanya every now and then just to induce slumber, but no booze. Yeah, exactly. I got to take the edge off just to induce slumber, but no booze. Well, I'm done with booze. I can't. If I have half a glass of beer, I'm a dead man. I'll never be able to do it again. It was the hardest thing I ever did in my life.
That is courageous.
Yeah, it was hard. I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No, man, what you have to say is much more important than anything I have to say.
I don't know, man. I never shut up. I'm like, because I was vaccinated with a phonograph needle.
I think you both have that in common.
That is true. I was going to ask you, I did a little research, so I got a couple specifics to ask you about. I want to ask you about your experience with CPR, mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, in particular, as a fireman when the AIDS epidemic was underway. I'm told that's a relevant talking point. And I'm a little worried about where this might go, but that's what I got.
I'm excited for it.
I'll tell you a funny story. When you work in the South Bronx and Harlem, there's a lot of immigrants. It's like you got a lot of people, English is second language, ESOL. You got a lot of people from Central America, South America, it's a poor neighborhood.
They don't all speak good English like you.
They don't speak the Queen's English like I do. I beg your pardon. Can you tell me how to get to Grand Central Station, or should I just go fuck myself? Go fuck yourself. You want to go to Grand Central? Go fuck yourself. How about that?
He's got his pinky up in the air, too.
Yeah, I believe it.
So English is a second language. So we're working down there one afternoon. I'm the probie. I'm the new guy on the block. I'm the probationary firefighter, the probie. So I'm going to get all the shit jobs to come up, right? So It's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We pull up. There's a guy unconscious. There's about 20 people around him, right in the middle of the street. So we get off the rig. Of course, we bring oxygen. I go over there. I see the guy's unconscious. I tilt his head. I make an airway. I'm just about to start working on him. And I get a thought in my head, because this is when the HIV thing was going on bad, And this is a homeless guy, I look up at the crowd. I say, hey, wait a second. Does anybody know this guy? And one guy in the back says, oh, yeah, I know. I says, terrific. Does he have HIV? He's no, he definitely don't have HIV. No way. I says, great. So I'm just about to put my mouth down him. He says, I think he's got Blue Cross.
And that was the first HIPAA violation, if I'm not mistaken. That's when HIPAA was invented, right? In that moment, when you're getting healthcare information from the street as a fireman. From the street.
Only way to fly. The unmistakable mark of the gunner.
That's too funny. Now, at some point in this illustrious path of yours, you were a bartender as well. Is that right? Did you tend bar?
I started out as a bartender in New Orleans.
Yeah.
I went to New Orleans in 1970 when I first came back from Vietnam.
I think. I was going to say, I think if you write a memoir, there's I'm going to be a little crass here myself, but there's an expression about you don't shit where you eat. It seems like throughout your entire life you were getting high on your own supply.
Yeah, that's true. True enough. The only thing I can't resist is temptation, Michael. That's always been my downfall.
All right, so you're bartending after Vietnam. You're bartending.
So so I came back from Vietnam in 1970, and I got a letter from my brother, who was down in New Orleans. And he says to me, Billy, you got to get your ass down here. It's the closest town in Europe I've ever been in. He goes, it's great. So I had an Austin Healey, which I bought hot from my buddy Vinny, actually. I came back from Vietnam. He says, you need a car? He says, yeah. He said, what do you want? I said, I want an Austin Healey, MK3, nice, sports car. He says, okay, what color you want? I said, I don't know, white. But 3 days later, he shows up on a white Austin Healey. All the wires are hanging on it from the ignition pulled. He's got the papers for me. He gives me the registration, the papers, everything. He says, don't drive in a Riverdale. He says, okay.
Is there blood in the car? Is there somebody's arm stuck?
No blood. Nice, clean job. Right. So I took it to New Orleans, and I loaded up, went down to New Orleans. I went there for 2 weeks, stayed 2 years. I started tending bar in Bourbon Street. Started tending bar in Pat O'Brien's, which is a busy joint down there. And it's a great town. I mean, look, any town is a great town to be young in. Mm-hmm. But to be young in New Orleans when you're an alcoholic, and it's a 24-hour booze town,
right?
I mean, you can get a drink in New Orleans at 7 o'clock in the morning just as easy as you can at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, sure.
So the bars never closed. So, I mean, for me, it was paradise. And then I started tending bar. Of course, given my disposition, there was always a lot of women, and as a bartender. So I stayed there like 2 years. And that's when I learned how to tell. But then I went back to New York and I opened up my own joint. And then about 10 years later, I opened up another joint. And then I got on the fire department. So I've had a real wild run. I've been all over the place.
At some point, I'm told Perrier on tap becomes a relevant theme.
Yeah, that was a joke I used to break. When you had all the yuppies, I had a joint that was like, I used to do bands. I mean, Twisted Sister. I don't know if you know who they are.
Sure. We're Not Going to Take It. Is that them?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Good Rats, And anyway, I used to do these real loud bands and shit. And we used to get a lot of kids, And I was about 26 years old, but I had a really successful joint. This joint was like the hottest joint in Queens. And all these young, like, I guess you call them yuppies.
Yeah.
Would come in and they'd say, like, do you have Perrier? And I said, like it's club soda. I said, yeah, Perrier, yeah, sure. It's $2 for a club soda. Perrier on tap for you, $5. Like I got to direct the print. I mean, because they didn't know shit anyway. And I just say, yeah, okay, I got Perrier. $5. Here you go.
Yeah.
But anyway, we used to get a lot of loud bands, and a lot of good bands too. The Drifters. We did the Drifters. We did some good bands. Matter of fact, Ace Frehley.
Yeah, Kiss.
Kiss grew up in my neighborhood.
Really?
Wow.
I know him real well.
I was a big Ace Frehley fan. I even liked his solo album. Back in the New York Groove was one of my favorite songs.
Back in the New York Groove. Paul Frehley. I'll tell you a story about Paul Frehley. He was like...
his name was not Ace? Huh. Surprising.
His real name is Paul Freely. I was going up to Vietnam. I just joined the Army. I joined the Air Force. I'm 18 years old. Paul was about 2 years younger than me, maybe a year. And it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm going up to catch the subway to take me to Whitehall Street, which is going to define the next 4 years of my life. And as I'm walking up the hill, I look over on the stoop, and I see Paul Freely with a paper bag, a number 2 paper bag, and he's sniffing glue out of the paper bag. You know, that was a big thing in those days, airplane glue. He's sniffing airplane glue. So I said, poor Paul, man. Look at that shit. He ain't going nowhere. At least I got a future. You know? With that marvelous acumen that's earned me the nickname American Nostradamus.
Yeah.
So about a year later, I'm crawling through ice patties, and this guy's the lead guitarist for one of the top rock groups in the world, you know?
Right.
And he got thrown out of KISS for doing too many drugs, which is really remarkable when you think about it. How do you get thrown out of a rock band for doing too much drugs?
Yeah, and the moral of the story is Billy became a great aficionado of model glue, right? You picked it up after that?
That wasn't one of my many vices. I was able to avoid the airplane glue.
Yeah.
Everything else, no problem. So, yeah, that was Paul Fairley, Ace.
I love it.
Oddly enough, my daughter, who's married now, and she's got her own salon and everything. She does Martha Stewart's hair. As a matter of fact, she flies around on a private jet and does Martha Stewart's hair. She's got her own salon. She's doing great.
Can she do anything for me? Can she help me at all?
Sorry?
Can she do anything for me?
Oh, yeah, she can do it. I hope your hair falls out, by the way.
I see a little piece growing up there.
Yeah.
Looks like you come to with a firecracker, right, Chaz?
That's all right. All right, your daughter's.
Anyway, he was going out with a guy who was in Freely's band. So she says, I was down in Florida at the time. She said, Pop, my boyfriend's playing at the Hard Rock Cafe with Freely's band.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, if you go see him, you can go backstage and meet Ace. People, I grew up with Ace, right? Mm-hmm. But she don't know that because, different generation. So I get my friend Twiggy, who grew up with him also.
The name, right?
And me and Twiggy go down to see Ace. So we watched the show, and the bass guitarist who told to look out for us goes, come to the side door, after the show. So we go to the side door, and he goes, would you like to meet Ace? Like, it's a big deal to me, right? Like, I want to meet Ace. Well, I know the guy.
Yeah.
So he says, yeah, sure, I'd like to meet Ace. Mm-hmm. He goes, but come on backstage, give him a few minutes till he gets acclimated. So we come back, and as soon as I walk through the door, he says, hey, you glue-sniffing motherfucker, how you doing? The kid looks at me like a shot. I'm like, what the?
That's
and then he says,
funny.
Billy, what are you doing here?
That's too
this
funny.
guy's banging around with my daughter. I said, that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to find out what's going on. So, that's my Ace Freely stick.
I want to ask about the last first of your chapters, comedy, but I want to just on a whim. You happen to know where Twiggy got his name? I always wonder where people get their names.
Right, I like that.
Yeah, Twiggy was a very sinewy character. Long arm, skinny. You know what? What's a boxer I'm trying to think of? Tommy Hearns.
Okay.
He was built like Tommy Hearns.
Kind of
very
lanky.
Strong.
Yeah.
Very strong, but, willowy,
Twiggy.
And so we called him Twiggy because Twiggy was a big model at the time, so we called him Twiggy, was his nickname.
Do you ever develop any nicknames? What was your nickname?
Billy O.
Not very creative, my friend.
Billy O, that was my nickname. That was it.
You could remember that.
Like we had a guy with big ears. We used to call him Wingnut. There was one guy we had one. Was a guy in my neighborhood. He had one arm. We used to call him Slot Machine. Everybody called him Slot Machine. We loved the guy, but he had one arm. So
I've always wanted a nickname.
Kind of an easy target.
I've never. I mean, nothing anyone's called me to my face. I've always thought it'd be cool to have a nickname.
You say that, and then you get one, and you're not gonna like it.
Yeah.
Rose up here for some reason. Let me see what's going on. We good? We back?
Oh yeah, we got you. We were just talking about nicknames, and I
tell you a quick story. We had a guy in the firehouse. Ball breakers too in the firehouse because they're all New York guys. They're all ball breakers.
Yeah.
Which was how we show affection,
Sure.
And the guy came into the firehouse, and he says, "Look, I'm looking at the Super Bowl pool, and I see a guy's name up there, and it says Cock on the Super Bowl." And I says, "What do you got? Who's this guy Cock?" He says, "Oh yeah, that's the new guy. His name is Richard, but he told us he doesn't like to be called Dick."
That's funny. He knew it was
That's
something.
it. For his whole 20 years, his name was Cock. I mean, that was it.
Oh,
never lose it once a day. You know?
That's how it happens.
You don't want someone else to choose your nickname.
You ever have a nickname, Chaz?
My nickname is Chaz.
That's fair. No, well, then mine's Mike. I mean, that's just a short form. That's not a nickname.
Kind of, but it's not like, I mean, my name is Chiselle.
Yeah, not like Gazelle or anything? You ever get Gazelle?
Well, I mean, when I ran track, yeah.
All right.
But I didn't want my nickname. I didn't want it. It was just kind of thrust upon me. And then in high school, and someone started calling me that name, and the rest of the students started calling me that. I was like, hey, I don't like it. And then the teacher, when she started calling me Chaz, I knew it was over. I just had to embrace it.
Is it C-H-A-Z like Chaz Palminteri?
Yep, that's my nickname, C-H-A-Z.
Who's Chaz?
Chaz, another big Bronx legend, man. A Bronx Tale. He's the guy, Chaz Palminteri. He's a big hero of mine.
Except Chaz is mostly associated with men, and obviously I'm not a man. So I guess it makes it a little more memorable, though, right?
So, yeah, I sort of figure it as a nickname for a guy named Charlie. You know, Charlie.
Exactly.
So to wind it down, and we should have had you on for this should have been a multi-episodic.
Oh yeah, he's fun.
Time, but you become a comedian, and a very good one, and a very in demand one with a very unique voice. That's obviously the sum total of all these experiences you had. I mean, you're funny to begin with, and your experiences would either kill you or make you be able to laugh about them. But weave it all together. How do you get into comedy?
Yeah, that was another story. I was in college.
Is that a cat?
And, excuse me a second. I don't think there was one.
Lovely cat.
So I'm in college, and I'm sitting next to this guy in a speech class, right? Maybe there's 12 guys in the class, and girls or whatever. And he turns around to me and he says, hey, you know, you're a pretty interesting guy. You're 64 years old. You're in college. He goes, how about you come out? He said, I run a little group. He says, and we're having like a meeting Friday night. Would you come and speak to my group? I said, what do you want me to speak about? He goes, I don't know, just about your life in general. I said, all right, I'll go, sure. So I show up Friday night. I expect to see 12 or 15 people. There's an auditorium with like 400 people in, right? And they got me up in the front with my name, Billy O'Connor. Then they got like a working touring comedian. They got the head of the student body. They got this guy. They got 6 speakers. And I never spoke publicly in my life, So I see this guy. I says, what are you, some kind of an asshole? Come in. What did you set me up here for? I don't want to speak in front of 400 people. I said, what am I supposed to speak about? He goes, well, it's an improv thing, so I can't really tell you. You got to just improv. So I said, you son of a bitch. I said, I feel like busting you right in the face, you asshole. What are you, nuts? So anyway, make a long story short, they do 3 or 4 guys. Now it's my turn. I get on stage. There's 400 kids. They're all 20-year-old kids, 21-year-old kids.
And again, to remind our listeners, you're in college, but you're 62, 63 at this point.
63. I'm older than the professors.
Right, yeah. You're not pledging the fraternity or anything.
The kid who set me up says to me, hey, Billy, you've had an interesting life. What can you tell students out there that happened to you that will never happen to them? I said, what happened to me that will never happen to them? Give me that microphone. No problem. And I went into like a 10-minute rant. I was walking up and down the stage. They're all laughing. I'm having a great time. I'm laughing my ass off. I'm really enjoying it. They almost had to yank me off the stage with a hook after 20 minutes.
That's funny.
I'm just riffing, but I'm having a ball. After the thing is over, I go down, and all these kids, it's about 4 around this guy, 2 around this guy, 2 around the head of the student body, and there's a mob of kids around me. And I says, what the hell do you want me for? This guy's a professional. This guy's won an Olympic gold medal. This guy's a professional. What do you want? We want to talk to you. And I said, I took back and told my girlfriend, I said, you know what? I said, maybe I'm funny. I said, I always wanted to try stand-up.
Maybe.
I want to check it out. I want to check it out. So they had a little group, and a couple of touring comics right now, J.C. Carias and this guy, Chris Cope. They ran the group. And I introduced myself, and they said, go give us 5 minutes. I gave them 5 minutes, and they said, you're in. That's it. And they started doing it. And of course, as you know, 5 becomes 10, 10 becomes 12, 12 becomes 15. Then you can you start featuring, but the thing with me, I just thought you had to be funny.
Right.
It's not really like that, comedy. You got to be clean. I mean, and the reason you got to be clean is if you want to work, you got to be clean. And I was filthy. And I was just filthy because it came natural to me. Like, every other word out of my mouth in the Bronx was fucking this, fucking that, fucking you, fucking it, And it just came easy. And when you're on stage, of course, you're a little nervous. And it's easy to reach for that lazy man's adjective.
Yeah. But that is your voice. I'm a clean comic, but I don't have any trouble with someone whose authentic voice has curse words in it, that using them as part of the stories.
But the problem is when you're opening for a touring comic, and I don't care. I opened for Andrew Dice Clay.
Right.
And I said, well, he's dirty, right? They said, you got to do clean. He don't want you doing dirty.
Correct.
Because now you steal some of his thunder. And then if you open somebody clean, now, I mean, their whole audience is there to see them do clean. You come out as a feature and you do dirty.
Yep.
You're useless. You just blew it.
Yeah, until you get your own audience, which most of us, don't get to that point, at least with regularity. Yeah, you got to service the headliner, and if you're dirty, you're going to limit your opportunities.
Exactly. Unless you're Joey Diaz, you get big enough that they're coming to see you.
Right.
Then you can do anything you want.
Yeah.
But when they're coming to see somebody else, you got to work like you're on television all the time. It's because especially if you want to work corporate gigs, as you well know, they want clean.
Yeah.
Go on the boats. Go on the tour boats.
Cruise ships.
You got to be able to do at least 45-minute clean in the afternoon. You can do dirty at night, but they want clean.
Yeah. So
you got to be able to do clean. You're better off honing your craft as clean. And I just went down the other road. And besides that, I'm 75 years old now, right?
You look great, man.
What am I going to do? Be the darling in the nursing homes? You know what I mean? Like, where am I going with this? Will I get to someplace they're all wheeled out in front of me, dribbling on themselves? Hey, well, I just flew in from New York. My arms are tired. What are you going to do with this? So
it's an audience. We're going to be in the old age home anyway. We may as well entertain the people while we're there.
I mean, pal, I'm taking the easy way out. My wife said, all right, she's prepped. She knows what the time is. When I start dribbling, I tell her, get me a bottle of Jack and a bag of smack. We'll call it a day.
Hey, all you got to do is pay the $17 and go in the tunnel through Jersey and do your thing.
Do it out there. Your sister. Good call, Mike.
I like it.
Good call.
A call back in our interview. How about that? Well, Billy, thanks for joining us, brother. You are amazing. We could have made this 4 hours, and I think our audience would have loved it. And you're a good man. You're a good friend. For people that want to follow you, they can check out any of these amazing books that you've written, and also check you out regularly on the Mick, a Mook, and a Mike podcast.
A Mook and a Mike.
So
thank you so much, Michael, for having me. Chaz, nice meeting you. You guys have a great day.
Very nice meeting you, Billy.
I'll see you in church.
Thanks, brother.
I doubt it, but I'll never know. Take care.
Bye.
Well, there we go. What do you think of Billy O'Connor?
He's fun. He's a lot of fun. I can understand why you're friends with him.
He's a hoot. He is definitely a hoot.
Also, he's got the best stories. I mean, just listening to him, hearing a little bit about his life, it's like trouble kind of just finds you. And then now later in his life, you look back on it and he can make a joke about it. I feel like that's the best attitude to have.
Oh, yeah. And he's, in my humble opinion, what a podcast should be like as a conversation with someone at a dinner table, telling stories that are, whatever you like, a little off color or funny or just whatever. But I could spend all day with him.
Understandably.
So I got a question for you. Do you know who Kiss is?
I've heard of them. I can't say I've listened to any of the music unless there's some popular song that I just don't know.
I want to rock and roll all night.
Okay, I've heard that one.
Yeah, I mean,
I couldn't have told you it was Kiss.
Okay, so Kiss's hallmark was that they all wore makeup.
Is it like the lightning thingy? Is that them?
They each had their own. Sort of, one of them had a heart around their eye. I believe that was the
maybe the S's
Peter
looked
Criss,
a little
maybe
edgy. I don't know.
Yeah, you should check them out. But then
Google it.
Big deal. They took their makeup off and then they put their makeup back on. But they were big. They were, what we called heavy metal back then. It pales in comparison to the
it's very heavy now. Yeah,
but good stuff. They were very important. But I think Billy's recovery story is a great one. Hopefully resonates with listeners. And what a survivor.
Right. That's not easy to overcome.
No, heck no. So that was fun. Thanks for being with me on this one.
Are you kidding? Of course.
Maybe we'll get you back. Would it be all right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm having a blast.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Goodbye.
My first radio.